My daughter-in-law thought she could feed me, a retired legal secretary, spoiled scraps on her doormat like a dog. What she didn't know was that I had spent 3 months assembling a digital file of her infidelity, which I delivered via mass text to her husband, her CEO, and his unsuspecting wife. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The final decision that shattered my quiet life was rendered not by a judge, but by the closing agent's pen on a damp Tuesday afternoon. I had just signed the deed for the house my husband Frank and I had paid for over 40 years, trading the bedrock of my stability for a desperate, foolish hope. The 6-figure proceeds from the sale, the repository of my entire married life, vanished into a locked trust account, a critical detail I kept secret. 2 days later, I was standing in the cold, cavernous, minimalist McMansion that my son, Kevin, and his wife, Monique, called home. I held one single suitcase and a heart full of nervous anticipation. I was ready to be a grandmother. I didn't realize I was reporting for my new unpaid position as domestic staff. My daughter-in-law, Monique, met me with a sleek, cold smile. She was the vice president of communications at a major downtown corporation. Her black silk jumpsuit probably cost more than my entire monthly pension check. She pointed toward the back of the house, away from the grand 2-story foyer. The guest suite is beautiful, but that's for, important guests, she said, her voice smooth and dismissive. We've put you here. You'll be closer to the action. She led me past the spotless, high-efficiency laundry room. The low, rhythmic thrum of the dryer was already a dull anchor in the silence. My room was a small, windowless den located directly over the 3-car garage. It was less a room and more a storage unit with a single cot squeezed inside. My knuckles whitened on the handle of my suitcase. "It's cozy, Essie," Monique chirped, using the childish nickname only my late husband, Frank, ever used. "You can help with the kids better from here." I felt the first sharp stab of the truth. This wasn't accommodation. It was relegation. This was a price for my presence. I just need to be near the grandkids, I told myself, swallowing the bitter taste of fear. Kevin appeared moments later, his face flushed and strained in his expensive cashmere sweater. He was a decent, weak man, caught in Monique's powerful gravitational pull. "Mom, isn't it great?" he asked, not meeting my eyes. "Now you won't be rattling around in that big old house all by yourself." "It's very close to the action, Kevin," I said, laying my small handbag on the wobbly dresser. He picked at a loose thread on his sleeve. "Yeah, exactly. The neighborhood was changing, Mom. It wasn't safe." This is the smart thing to do. The urgency in his voice was Monique's, not his own. He was desperate for my approval so he could keep his peace. The neighborhood was rapidly, aggressively gentrifying. Our simple bungalow was suddenly a hot property. Monique, the communications VP with a nose for branding, knew its rising value to the penny. They hadn't wanted me close. They had wanted my house. They wanted the simple, sweet old lady they could control, believing the proceeds were easy access for their endless spending. "The trust is secure, Kevin," I said, deliberately inserting the one small weapon I held. "Frank made sure of that. I can access the funds, of course, but it's not for general expenses." Kevin's face froze for a fraction of a second, a flicker of disappointment before the mask of concern snapped back into place. The key piece of leverage I held was not for them to find. The very next morning, my new job description was formally delivered. Monique slapped a thick, laminated sheet of paper onto the small dresser in my tiny room. It was a brightly colored, meticulously organized chore list. The title was bold and cheerful, "Grandma's Helpful Routine." "This is just so you know what needs doing," she said, her voice polite, almost sweet, but laced with iron. You can check off the boxes. It's for efficiency. I scanned the list. Up at 6 a.m. to unload the dishwasher. Make their complicated, multi-step individual school lunches. Get the 8-year-old twins dressed and fed. A daily battle with tiny entitled tyrants. Then, the adult breakfast. Kevin's black coffee, but Monique's 10-ingredient wellness smoothie. And the core, Essie, she emphasized, tapping a perfectly manicured nail against the laminate. Your core in exchange for this luxurious accommodation is to be the full-time, on-call nanny, chef, and housekeeper. My retirement was a relentless, grueling blur of servitude. I was working harder now than I ever had at the municipal civil court. I cleaned the kitchen to her exacting, almost pathological standards. I did the endless loads of laundry, separating her delicate hand-wash-only designer clothes. I was invisible, working in a cold, silent house, where my worth was measured only by the tasks I checked off a list. One evening, after she swept in late from work, Kevin followed her into the kitchen. I was scrubbing the high-powered blender used for her smoothie, a 20-minute ordeal. You see, Mom, Kevin murmured close to my ear, his voice apologetic. She operates on a different level than us. She's stressed. She's a high performer. I looked at my son, his face tight with embarrassment. He wasn't defending me. He was apologizing for the disruption I caused to his perfect queen. His silence was not just weakness. It was an endorsement. He was sacrificing me, his own mother, on the altar of his wife's approval. I turned back to the stainless steel. The sink water felt suddenly frigid, freezing the last drop of my hope. I had to find a way to make him see. But first, I had to survive. My days became a cycle of tasks and sharp, casual cruelties. I was a ghost in their own home, quietly cleaning up the trail of expensive wrappers, designer shoes, and discarded toys left by my 2 entitled grandchildren. I was an observer, a documenter, trapped in the eye of their high-contrast, high-turnover world. Monique's most insidious tool was the critique of my cooking. I would spend an hour preparing a healthy, home-cooked meal, only for her to criticize it upon her return. One evening, the smell of roasted asparagus and chicken filled the kitchen. Monique scrolled through her phone at the granite island, not even looking at me. Esther, did you use regular olive oil on the roast of asparagus? She asked, wrinkling her perfect nose. My hand slipped on the stainless steel counter. I knew where this was going. I braced myself. I used the bottle by the stove, Monique. I've told you, she sighed, her voice laced with martyred patience. I only want us using the cold-pressed single-origin avocado oil. It has a much higher smoke point, and it's better for our lipid profiles. She finally looked up, her eyes hard. Please try to remember that. I'll add it to the grocery list. I expect you to handle tomorrow. Kevin, my son, shot me a pleading look from across the island. Just apologize, Mom. Don't make it a thing. She stressed. He became her chief enabler, her official apologist. He would stand by, silent and nodding, as she treated me with a condescension that curdled into open contempt. I focused on the sharp, oily scent of the asparagus. I'll make a note of it, I said, my voice quiet, flat. The only sign of my anger was the tightening in my jaw. The humiliations were constant, creative, and deeply personal. She would forget to include me in their weekend dinner plans, leaving me to find whatever scraps I could in the back of their massive sub-zero fridge after they'd swept out to an expensive new restaurant. The loneliness was a cold, physical weight. Then came the hand-me-downs. One afternoon, she appeared at the door to my tiny room, holding a silk designer blouse and a pair of pumps. Her face was a mask of pitying, benevolent charity. Esther, this is so last season, she said, dangling the garments. I was just going to donate it to Goodwill, but it's still in pretty good condition. And I thought, well, you could probably get some use out of it. The blouse alone had cost more than my entire monthly pension. I took the clothes, the bitter metallic taste of humiliation flooding my mouth. I felt her contempt, like a physical blow. This wasn't generosity, it was rage bait. It was the slow, daily poisoning of my dignity, and my son, my only child, just stood by and watched. The more she bullied me, the more her arrogance and cruelty seemed to grow in direct proportion to her success at work. And that success, she claimed, was all thanks to her boss, the CEO, Damen Marshall. Damen was a constant, almost mythic presence. Damen and I closed the major Northwest client. Damen is flying me first class to Chicago. Damen is counting on me. Her stories were always laced with his name, her voice taking on a breathless, almost reverent quality. It wasn't just professional respect. It was hero worship. At first, I dismissed it. She was ambitious. He was her mentor. Fine. But the instincts I'd honed by transcribing thousands of depositions began to prickle. I started to notice the other things. The secret, smiling texts. She would be sitting on the sofa, her phone angled away from Kevin, a private smile playing on her lips as she texted furiously. If Kevin asked, she would snap. "It's work, honey. Damen. He never stops." Then came the urgent work dinners, always on a Friday evening, the ones Kevin was never invited to. She would return past midnight, her eyes sparkling, her hair slightly mussed, smelling not of a stuffy restaurant, but of expensive wine and a different, distinct masculine cologne. The scent of a cologne that was absolutely not my son's filled the air. The signs of her secret life were not subtle, they were brazen. The gifts, for instance. After the Chicago conference, a small, elegant designer bangle appeared on her wrist. "Oh, this," she trilled when I noticed it. "Just a little well done from Damen. He gave one to all the senior VPs for hitting our targets. He's just so generous to the whole team." I'm just a simple retired legal secretary, but I know what a corporate bonus looks like. It comes in a paycheck with taxes deducted. It does not come in a slim red velvet-lined box from a high-end designer. I started to watch her, no longer the dowdy mother-in-law, but the silent, invisible observer. As a woman who had, in her career, transcribed the lurid, tearful, angry confessions of hundreds of betrayed spouses, I recognized the classic, textbook, almost cliché patterns of infidelity instantly. She wasn't just a bully. She was a liar, a blatant, reckless, and incredibly arrogant liar. She was betraying my son, my weak, adoring, foolish son. Betraying him in his own home while I, his mother, was being treated as the household help. The hypocrisy, the sheer brazen sociopathic audacity was staggering. The rage bait wasn't just about the dog plate anymore. It was about this deeper, more profound, more fundamental betrayal. I became the documenter, the archivist of sins, and a cold, familiar professional resolve began to take root. She was a case, a file to be built. I didn't hire a private investigator. I had 40 years of professional experience in observation and documentation. Most importantly, I had access. My laminated chore list, the one Monique had so thoughtfully provided, included light tidying and dusting of their pristine glass and chrome home office, a room that was clearly her domain. It was my duty to dust the keyboards, wipe the smudges off their oversized monitors, and organize the clutter. She saw me as the help. She was so profoundly dismissive of me that she had made a critical, fatal, amateur mistake. She left her entire secret life wide open for me to find. Before I could access her secrets, I needed a tiny bit of tech skill. I decided to use the same logic she used to trap me. "Kevin," I asked one Sunday afternoon, surprising him while he was watching a game. I'm having trouble with the grocery list. How do I get an app on the iPad? Like if I needed a recipe or to write something down. He blinked, clearly annoyed at the interruption. Oh, Mom, it's easy. You just need to log in with your Apple ID. Wait, I think I already logged your email into the family's shared iPad a while back when I synced the calendar. Just make sure you use a simple password, okay? He had, in his well-intentioned, technically illiterate way, already logged my email into the family's shared iPad. He'd wanted to make sure I, the nanny, could keep track of the kids' endless shifting appointments. He didn't realize that in trying to share a simple calendar, he had also, disastrously for her, synced her entire iMessage history and her entire photo stream to the cloud, accessible by any device logged into that ID, including the family iPad. I thanked him and watched him return to his game. My heart gave a low, methodical thump. The universe had given me the key. I just had to wait for her one fatal, careless mistake. One Tuesday afternoon, the air in the pristine glass and chrome home office was sharp with the scent of lemon polish. Kevin was at work. The kids were at school. Monique, according to her shared family calendar, was at a client strategy lunch. Her discarded receipts, which I also tidied, told a different story. A spa day at a 5-star hotel downtown. The house was blessedly silent. Monique's work laptop, a top-of-the-line, expensive MacBook, was open on her desk, the screen dark, but asleep. I moved to wipe it down, my dusting cloth brushing lightly, accidentally, against the trackpad. The screen flickered to life instantly, blindingly unlocked. She hadn't even bothered to password protect it or set a screensaver lock. Why would she? Who was there to see it? Just me. The simple, harmless, technologically illiterate old woman who supposedly didn't know the difference between a hard drive and a toaster. That's how little she thought of me. Her arrogance was my key. Open on her desktop, maximized, was her work iMessage, synced, of course, to her phone for efficiency. My heart began to pound, a low, heavy, methodical drum. Thump, thump, thump. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it was a profound, terrible violation of her privacy. But then I thought of the daily, quiet, soul-grinding humiliation. I thought of the bitter shame of accepting her last season hand-me-downs. I thought of my son, her husband, whose trust she was betraying and laughing at behind his back every single day while I was being treated as his servant. Dogs are loyal, unlike you, I thought, my resolve hardening into pure, cold steel. I'm a stenographer. My fingers are fast, accurate, and discreet. My typing speed even now is over 120 words per minute. I didn't just snoop, I documented. I sat down in her expensive, ergonomic, white leather chair. I opened a new blank document and I began to transcribe. But it was worse and better than just transcribing. I didn't even need her laptop, which I quickly closed, wiping my fingerprints from the trackpad. Later that night, in the privacy of my small garage-adjacent room, the laundry machine rumbling comfortingly on the other side of the wall, I picked up the kid's iPad. I opened the innocent-looking green iMessage icon. There, in a cascade of blue and gray bubbles, was her entire sordid secret life. A river of betrayal, dating back years. I sat there, my blood turning to ice, and I began to read, to scroll, to document, and to save. The hum of the dryer provided a mundane, thrumming soundtrack to the destruction of my son's marriage. It was worse, so much worse than I could have ever imagined. This wasn't a new flirtation or a foolish recent mistake. This was a long-running, systematic, deeply cynical deception that had been going on for years. The texts between her and Damen Marshall were a novel of treachery. They weren't just flirtatious, they were logistical, operational. They were planning their real lives around the inconvenient architecture of their marriages and families. The evidence rolled out like a transcript in court, page after damning page. 3 months ago, a thread from Damen Marshall read, "I've booked the penthouse suite at the Peninsula. 2 nights? Make sure you book your own, separate, much cheaper room at the Convention Hotel for appearances. My secretary will handle the expense report for both." Monique's reply cut me deeper than any oil critique. Amazing. Can't wait to get out of this house. Kevin is driving me insane about the new credit card bill. He's so boring with money. He'll be thrilled I'm saving the company money by staying at the cheaper place. My son's financial anxiety, a stress she actively exacerbated with her endless spending, was a joke to them. A piece of cover for their 5-star trysts. Then I opened the shared with you photo stream from Damen's contact. My steady stenographer's hands began to shake, not with fear, but with rage. The digital, high-resolution proof of her betrayal was explicit, undeniable. There was a selfie of Monique sent from her phone to his that made my stomach turn. She was in a plush, unfamiliar hotel room, wearing a black silk robe that was clearly not hers, open just enough to be deliberately provocative. The caption she'd sent, "Project deadline, see you in 5, ready for my performance review." There was a photo he had sent her, a screenshot of a first-class flight confirmation for a business trip to a Caribbean island retreat, not a sales conference in Dallas. 2 names on the itinerary, Monique Wallace and Damen Marshall. But then I found it, the one that sealed her fate, the one that made what she was about to do to me on this year's Thanksgiving so much more monstrous, so much more unforgivable. I scrolled back, my fingers numb, back to last Thanksgiving. A text from Monique sent at 11:30 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. My mother-in-law is here. She brought a pie from scratch, a sweet potato pie. She's so boring. She's just sitting there smiling at everyone trying to be helpful. She's sucking all the life and energy out of the room. I might actually die of politeness. Save me, please. Damen's reply just 2 minutes later. My God, that sounds tragic. A true holiday horror story. Ditch the old lady and the boring pie. Come to my place. I'll give you something to really be thankful for. Monique's reply, 2 minutes after that, on my way. Told Kevin I had a work emergency at the office. A server crashed and I'm the only one who can fix it. He bought it. Of course, he's a fool. You're a lifesaver. See you in 20. She had left me. She had left her husband on Thanksgiving Day to be with her lover. I sat in the cold, dark, laundry-scented room, and I photographed everything. I used my own phone, taking crystal clear, high-resolution pictures of the iPad screen. Every damning text, every sordid photo, every single word of that Thanksgiving betrayal. I saved them all. I uploaded them to a new, secure, password-protected, encrypted cloud folder, Thanksgiving Evidence. The bomb was built. For 3 long, agonizing, soul-crushing months, I lived with that knowledge, that digital poison. My every interaction with them became a grotesque performance. I would watch my son, Kevin, lean over and kiss her, his eyes full of a blind, naive, misplaced adoration, and the hypocrisy of it would taste like acid in the back of my throat. He was defending her, sacrificing me, his own mother, on the altar of her happiness, while she was actively, enthusiastically betraying him. What in this impossible, nightmarish situation was the loyal thing to do? My first primal maternal instinct was to show him, to shatter his entire world. But I couldn't. He was weak. This level of profound betrayal, from both his wife and his boss, might be more than he could bear. He might shatter right along with his illusions. I held it. I said nothing. I prayed for any resolution that did not require me to be the one to pull the pin. I was terrified of being cast out by him as the liar. I sat on a 10-megaton bomb and had no idea where to point the fuse. The weeks ticked by toward this year's Thanksgiving, and Monique's cruelty only got worse. More blatant, more dismissive, more arrogant. My quiet endurance, my refusal to be baited, she saw not as dignity, but as weakness and surrender. Her affair wasn't just a secret. It was the source of her power, her utter smug, terrifying untouchability. She was getting away with everything. She was living two perfect parallel lives, funded and facilitated by the men she was deceiving. And I, the quiet, all-seeing, all-knowing mother-in-law, was the only person in her perfect world she could safely, satisfyingly kick. My mistreatment became her sport. My moral dilemma began to shift. This wasn't just about protecting my son from a painful truth anymore. This was about enduring, or not enduring, my own daily escalating psychological abuse. Why was I the only one suffering the consequences of her betrayal? Why was my dignity less important than her right to cheat, lie, and abuse without disruption? I still hesitated. I still loved my son too much to be the one to detonate his life just to save my own pride. Until the morning of Thanksgiving, the tension was thick. Monique was a whirlwind of stressed out, high-strung energy, vibrating with the need for everything to be perfect. She and Kevin were hosting a large catered dinner, not for family. I was the only family member present, but for her world. Her boss, the CEO Damen Marshall, and his oblivious, socially prominent wife, Damen Marshall, were the guests of honor. This was a power play, a networking event, cunningly disguised as a holiday celebration. I knew I was the uninvited, inconvenient, embarrassing ghost at this feast of ambition. I assumed I would simply be expected to stay in my room, hidden away, a quiet, unspoken, mutually understood arrangement. But Kevin, his face pale and strained, knocked on my tiny garage-adjacent room door around 11 a.m. The rich, savory smell of roasting turkey and expensive herb side dishes was already wafting through the house. "Hey, Mom," he began, his voice a low, guilty, exhausted mumble. He was clearly already beaten down by Monique's pre-party demands. "Hey, honey," I said, my own voice quiet and armed with the secret knowledge of his wife's treachery. Look," he stammered, picking at a loose thread on his expensive cashmere sweater, a sweater I now realized I had probably paid for with one of my loans. "Monique is really stressed about the table setting today. With Damen and Damen Marshall coming, we have a lot of important guests, and everything has to be, absolutely perfect." "I understand, Kevin," I said quietly, already knowing with a cold sinking certainty where this was going. "She was thinking," he continued, finally looking at me, his eyes pleading, begging for me to just understand. Just to make things easier, quieter, smoother. Maybe it would be quieter if you just, ate in your room today. The lie tumbled out, desperate, pathetic. "We'll bring you a nice plate. A really nice plate from the caterers. The good stuff, the first plate. It's just there's not really any room at the table. It's a very specific formal seating chart for business. You understand? No room. No room." The two words, the final unforgivable humiliation on Thanksgiving Day. To be hidden away in my cell like a mad woman in the attic, while my son's wife entertained her lover and her lover's wife in the grand dining room. This was the line. This was the unforgivable sin. I looked at my son, at his weak, pleading face, and the last flicker of maternal pity, the last shred of my desperate desire to protect him from the truth, died. He was not a victim. He was a collaborator. He was a coward. "No, Kevin," I said, my voice no longer gentle. It was cold. It was quiet. I will not be eating in my room like a prisoner. He flinched, recoiled from the ice in my tone. Mom, please don't make this a thing. Monique is— I don't care how Monique is, I said, cutting him off, my voice sharp as a shard of glass. It is Thanksgiving. I am your mother. I'm coming to dinner. I am bringing my sweet potato pie as I do every year. You can find me a chair at the table, or I will stand, but I will be there. I closed the door softly, firmly in his pale, shocked, uncomprehending face. I went to my small, packed closet. I took out my best dress, a simple dark green velvet, old but elegant and dignified. I laid it on the cot. I went to my handbag, took out my phone, and checked the battery. Full. I opened the Thanksgiving evidence folder, the hotel selfie, the flight itinerary, the Thanksgiving text, the Chicago kiss, all present, all correct. I slipped the phone and the small, powerful thumb drive I had copied the files onto, a good legal secretary always has backups in triplicate, into the deep hidden pocket of the velvet dress. I was done hiding. I was done being a victim. I was done protecting my son from a truth he was actively, spinelessly participating in. I was going to dinner, and I was bringing the bomb. I arrived on their doorstep at precisely 4:02 p.m., unholding my sweet potato pie. The heavy, fragrant dish was still warm from my oven. I had used the small, neglected oven in their garage, refusing to set foot in Monique's sterile kitchen that day. The sophisticated sound of adult laughter and the clinking of expensive crystal glasses drifted through the thick, imposing front door. I walked up the long limestone pathway, my sensible heels clicking, my head held high. I rang the bell. The cheerful melodic chime, a sound I knew cost them $300, was a grotesque counterpoint to the cold, hard, righteous fury in my heart. The door was yanked open just a few inches, a barrier. Monique stood there, her body physically blocking the opening. She was a stunning, breathtaking vision of cold reptilian beauty, wearing a backless blood-red silk dress that must have cost a fortune. Her face, when she saw me standing there, my pie in hand, was a mask of controlled and utter fury. "I thought Kevin told you not to come," she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. Her eyes darted nervously back over her shoulder, checking if any of her important, powerful guests were watching the sordid domestic drama unfold on her doorstep. "Hello, Monique," I said calmly, my voice polite, as if greeting a stranger at a church social. "Happy Thanksgiving? I'm here to see my son and my grandchildren. As is my tradition, I've brought a pie." "We don't need your pie," she snapped, her eyes raking over me, over my simple dress with undisguised contempt. "We have a catered dessert buffet with macarons and pot de crème. We have no room for you." "I'm not asking for a throne, Monique," I replied, my voice still dangerously, unnervingly calm. I was a stenographer, recording this exchange in my mind. "I'll sit on a stool in the kitchen. I'll help the caterer serve, but I'm not going to be hidden away in a room by the garage like a shameful secret on Thanksgiving Day. I am your husband's mother. I am a guest in this house. Now please let me pass." I took a small, deliberate step forward. Her eyes flashed with a cruelty born of pure, cornered panic. She felt her control slipping, her perfect high-stakes party being threatened by my mere presence. She needed to reassert her dominance quickly, brutally, and definitively. "No room, Esther," she spat, her voice dropping to a low, final, chilling command. "You are not embarrassing me in front of Damen and Diana Marshall. You are not ruining this for me. You are not coming in." She turned and disappeared for a brief, terrible moment, back into the warmth and light of the foyer. I stood there, frozen. She came back a second later, but she wasn't with Kevin. She was holding a cheap, flimsy, bright red plastic plate, the kind you buy in a stack of 50 at a dollar store. On the plate was a pathetic, insulting, disgusting collection of scraps, a few dry, pale slivers of turkey gristle, a hard, dry brown nub, of what looked like discarded cornbread stuffing, a single congealed gelatinous spoonful of canned cranberry sauce. It was, I realized with a sickening jolt, the food from their kids' plates, the half-eaten discarded scraps scraped together. "Here," she said, her voice dripping with contempt so profound it was almost theatrical. She didn't hand me the plate. She leaned out, body still blocking the entryway, and set the red plastic plate on the ground on the coarse, muddy, bristled doormat, right next to a pair of Kevin's dirty, caked mud gardening boots. "If you're that hungry," she said, her voice a final dismissive, triumphant whisper, "you can eat on the porch like the dog. At least he knows his place." She started to close the door, the plate on the floor, the scraps like a dog. The sheer breathtaking, unforgivable arrogance. It all coalesced in that one horrific symbolic image. The sadness I felt, the hesitation, the moral dilemma about protecting my son, it all evaporated. It burned away like fog in a nuclear flash, leaving behind only the cold, hard, pristine, righteous certainty of a court stenographer who has just heard the final, damning, incontrovertible piece of testimony. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I laughed. It was a quiet, cold, bone-chilling laugh that surprised even me. It was a sound completely devoid of humor. It was the sound of a latch clicking open, of a weapon being armed. It stopped Monique in her tracks. Her smug, triumphant expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of genuine, startled confusion. She had expected tears, begging, a pathetic, defeated retreat. She had not expected laughter. "Oh, honey," I said, my voice suddenly clear, calm, and caring in the sudden silence of the porch. "That's where you're wrong." She stared at me, her eyes narrowing. "What?" "What did you say to me?" "Dogs," I said, taking a deliberate, steadying step back, my eyes locked on hers, my hands perfectly calm. "Dogs are loyal, unlike you." Her face tightened in confusion, then began to twist with anger. "What the hell are you talking about? Are you crazy? Get off my porch." "This," I said. I set my pie down very gently, very carefully on the porch railing, a final wasted gift. Then I reached into the deep velvet pocket of my dress. I pulled out my simple, unremarkable smartphone. My hands were perfectly steady. "You see, Monique?" I said, my voice still calm, conversational, as if patiently explaining the articles of discovery. "I've been a documenter my whole life. I notice things. I take notes. I save evidence. I transcribe betrayals." I unlocked the screen. I opened my photo gallery. I tapped the Thanksgiving evidence folder. It opened, revealing the neat, damning grid of thumbnails. "For 3 long, agonizing months," I said, "I have sat on this because I love my son, and I didn't want to be the one to destroy his life. I kept hoping you would show one single, solitary shred of basic human decency." Her color was draining away now. She knew. She didn't know what I had, but she knew in her gut that it was real. "But the dog plate, Monique," I said, my voice dropping to an almost regretful whisper. "That was a mistake, a fatal miscalculation. That was the final exhibit. That was the piece of evidence that told me you weren't just a liar. You were a monster, and you needed to be stopped." I selected the 5 most damning files. The hotel robe selfie, the first-class flight itinerary to a Caribbean island retreat with her and Damen's names, the screenshot of their filthy, mocking Thanksgiving text exchange from last year, and the photo of them kissing at the Chicago conference. "Esther." "No," she breathed, her voice a desperate gasp. "Don't. Please." "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand respect. I understand loyalty. And I understand send all." I opened a new text message, My fingers were flying, quick and precise, like a stenographer typing a final verdict. First, the primary target. Kevin. My son. He needed to see the woman he had sacrificed his mother for. Monique's eyes widened in pure abject terror. No, she breathed, a desperate, strangled gasp. Esther, no, don't. Please, I'll get you a plate. A real one. You can come in. Please, Esther, don't do this to me. Too late, Monique, I said, not looking up. The time for respect is over. Now is the time for consequences. Next, I scrolled to the contacts I had saved from her company's public website. Damen Marshall, CEO, then HR complaints, then every single name on the executive team and board of directors contact list. Click, click. Esther, stop, please, she begged, lunging for the phone. I stepped back easily out of her reach, holding the phone up. You really shouldn't have put the plate on the floor, Monique. And then the master stroke, the final devastating blow. The contact I had found just last week after hours of deep diving. The public, very active, very family-oriented Instagram handle for Diana Marshall Life. Damen's unsuspecting, socially prominent, and currently present wife. I added her handle to a new Instagram direct message. I typed one simple, brutally effective sentence. Happy Thanksgiving. So glad to see all Monique's hard work with her boss, Damen, is paying off. Here's a look at their last project, documented for your convenience. I attached the 5 files. Esther, no, don't, she shrieked, lunging at me again. I hit send to everyone all at once. I held the phone up, the screen bright in the gathering dusk, so she could see the little blue bar turn into a delivered check mark. It's done. Monique's face drained of all remaining color. She stared at my phone, at the delivered receipts, and she let out a wail. A sound of pure, unadulterated existential despair. The sound of a soul being ripped from a body. She lunged for the phone again, a desperate, clumsy, clawing motion. What did you do? What did you do? But I just stepped back easily out of her reach. It was too late. The bomb had landed. The fuses were lit. The explosions began from inside the house. Through the still open front door, we heard it. A man's voice, probably Kevin's from the living room. What the hell, Monique? 2 more phones, different notification sounds, from deeper within the party. And then the loudest sound of all, a woman's phone nearby. A sharp, questioning, what is this? And then the scream. It wasn't Monique's. It was a shriek of pure, sharp, horrified rage. Damen! The voice belonged to Diana Marshall. Damen, you lying son of a... This is your work emergency? This is your vice president? The party exploded. It wasn't just noise. It was pure, unadulterated chaos. I heard shouting, screaming, the sound of a glass breaking. I heard Diana Marshall yelling, her voice cracking with fury. I heard other guests shouting in confusion. And then I heard Kevin's voice. Not a shout. A low, strangled, agonized, "Oh my God, Monique!" The sound of a man's entire world, his marriage, his reality, shattering in a single devastating instant. Monique, hearing it all, the scream from her lover's wife, the broken, questioning cry from her husband, knew it was over. Her career, her marriage, her affair, her reputation, her entire carefully constructed, perfect, glittering life, all of it detonated by a single text message from the simple old woman she had just tried to feed like a dog. She crumpled to her knees on the doormat, right next to the red plastic plate of scraps. She let out a low, hollow animal wail of utter final ruin. And me? I, Esther, looked down at her, this broken, sobbing, pathetic creature, and I felt nothing. No pity, no remorse, no maternal ache. Just the cold, quiet, satisfying click of a file being closed, a case being won, a transcript being finalized. I turned my back on the chaos, on the screaming, on my son as he stumbled out the front door, his face a mask of shattered disbelief. He looked at me, then at his wife, then at the phone in his hand. I left my sweet potato pie sitting on the porch railing, a final mocking offering to a feast that would never be eaten. I walked calmly away from the house, my footsteps steady on the stone path. I got in my old sensible car. I started the engine. My hands were perfectly steady on the wheel. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw in my rearview mirror the front door of their perfect $1 million house wide open, guests spilling out onto the lawn, pointing, shouting as the wreckage of their Thanksgiving, their marriage, and their entire lives burned to the ground behind them. Justice, I thought as I turned the corner, heading home to my quiet, peaceful bungalow. It's not always served hot. Sometimes, as I know better than anyone, it's served ice cold, with receipts documented, transcribed, and delivered. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here,